No, no, no. Good evening. You're listening to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you in the Pine Hills Palace just west of Orlando, Florida. I'm in Extreme Studios wondering why this young 20-something Professor Pixel decided to act out and act like a wolf, and that must be because he's joining RDV from the Great Midwest and myself tonight in our stream covering The Wolfman from Universal 1941 with, I believe, Lon Chaney Jr. Gentlemen, I know this is something as a first watch a few years ago. You guys watched and reviewed here on the show, and it's been a while, but the reason why we're reviewing this tonight in terms of being the holiday season is the fact that this movie is the one the voters here on the channel voted for us to cover. So I'll go first with my initial thoughts. Love the atmosphere of this film. I think it's great. If you think that probably one of the funniest movies of all time, Young Frankenstein, is a good comedy film, you don't realize how good of a comedy that is until you watch what this original source material is based off of. This one. This is, again, one of the long lines of folk stories that Universal decided to create some sort of movie on, since they were having some success with Dracula and a few others. They went right ahead with this one. And I really like this because when I think of a black and white movie, ladies and gentlemen, I think of maybe an Orson Welles film here and there. Maybe I think of Humphrey Bogart films. But when I think of just shadows and darks and stuff that you could watch on the big screen today and still look great, I think of The Wolfman. RDV, I know that you're a big fan of some of the stuff here. What's your take on this?
So this is our third time that we've Pixel and I have ever reviewed this on the channel. At least I know, because we've done it with Friday Night Flicks. We did that for a while. Watch Along Party. So, and then we also did it again. I think it was you and I think Pixel was involved. I'm not sure, but now it's our third time, and honestly, this is a very good movie. It's not a movie, but I say, like, it's not the best version of the movie, though, in a sense. I love the 2010, I believe it's the 2010, yeah, Benicio del Toro Wolfman with Anthony Hopkins. You know, that was because literally when I first watched this, I watched it twice. I was like, this is a fantastic movie. But until I watched the 2010 movie, and I was like, wow. Not to say this is a bad movie. It's just that I like the other one better. This one, soundstage, great. And I also keep it. This is 1941. So why they did things, how they transition when he becomes a Wolfman, how the camera changes with mirror. I guess the way they did, because he had makeup on, so it made it look like how they changed everything. They did same thing they did with Jekyll and Hyde. It's all camera tricks. Yes. I love that. Claude Rains plays his father. Lon Chaney Jr. is the son, who is basically a man of pure heart will still turn into a wolf at night. You know, the little quote they have going on here and stuff. Very tragic. You know, that's one of the characters out of the monster guys. You know, it's always the Wolfman is the most tragic character because you're cursed. You know, and he did this to protect somebody, you know, and then from Bela Lugosi, and then he gets bit, and now he's the Wolfman, and he's trying to pursue this girl, you know, who he likes, you know, but he's also not blacking out. He's like doesn't know what's going on. You see like the footprints, and you see like the stuff on leaves and all stuff on his windowsill. Very tragic, but like I said, beautifully shot. Well. I still rank it higher than The Creature of a Black Lagoon. No, right. It's one of my top favorite classic Universal monster movies. So far, we've watched Frankenstein. Frankenstein is the best out of the ones we reviewed.
It's certainly darker than what you'd think. This movie is sad in a sense that you're right, it's cursed. And so Pixel, I mean, I know you're the young 20-something, so sometimes these older shows and movies we reference you haven't seen, and that's one of the interesting perspectives you're able to give us is, you know, what young people watch. Because, again, this being 1941 is good 59, 69, 79, 80 plus years old. I'm loving the fact that we're getting some horror movies out. I know that we recently reviewed Salem's Lot, the reimaging here. We had some pros and cons to say about that and the way it was done, but we've got Nosferatu being remade coming out around Christmas time, which is looks awesome. We've got The Wolfman actually coming out, I think, in January, which the trailer is one of those trailers that makes you want to see it. It's not one of those trailers that says, okay, let me show you the whole movie and just say that we're not even trying. I think we're getting one or two other horror movies coming up as well. Black Lagoon, I've been hearing about getting remade as well. So there's a reason why redoing after these years, besides money, is the reason why people are making it, but they're making it money off of doing it because there's something to these stories. And I think the whole sadness curse thing is deal. So Pixel, I wanted to ask you, again, you've maybe watched this a couple times over the past few years. Anything new or something that sticks out to you watching it here for a third time?
Second time. So what it was last time was we were doing Friday Night Flicks, and then that Sunday we would review the movie after we sat with it a few days. So we had that live reaction. So this was the second time going ahead into it.
So you didn't join us for the second time?
Yes, I enjoyed it still.
No, you didn't join us. I'm saying I thought you joined it for that Sunday.
Maybe I did. I can't remember. That was like 2-3 years ago. We've been doing this a while. No, I find this film, when it starts, it takes a bit to pull you in. But I really do enjoy it. But both times I have enjoyed it. I think the soundstage, we do have to keep talking about it because it is fan-freaking-tastic.
Mm-hmm.
It's astounding. And actually, I was here for the Wolfman review on the channel because I remember you digging into the history of the Universal sound stages and in our conversations.
Wait, is that a dog joke? Digging in?
No,
Wolf.
You'll be able to tell when I'm using a pun. No, here I think I love the wolf lore. The thing is, with the cane, Barnabas Collins has a cane with a wolf head.
I knew it.
And I think about it all the time. Whenever I think about these movies, I just go straight to Dark Shadow.
So, to mention to everybody listening, what young 20-something Professor Pixel is referencing is the fact that Professor Pixel is literally the only person on this planet, and we have him here exclusively on the Extreme Movie Show, to have watched all 1,225 episodes of Dark Shadows. I'm going to ask you, Pixel, that's a show that goes back from, if I recall, the 60s at least.
60s into the early 70s.
Right, and they may have been, very quickly produced episodes. But honestly, without knowing anything about it, where do you think you got the idea from? Again.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. This is absolutely where they go ahead and take that from.
And the cane's badass, let's be honest.
No, it's awesome. It's amazing. Yep. And I love that it's a silver-headed cane, and that's why it's beating the wolf. It's great. Those little lore bits are always fantastic. I also like the old gypsy woman who her son is killed because Bela Lugosi is the werewolf at first. Mm-hmm. Then once the attack happens and Larry beats him to death with the walking stick, he gets bit. And the lady explains, listen, take this, place it over your heart to try to protect yourself because you're a werewolf now. But it's a tragic tale. It really is. But that's what's so great. It's this classic tragedy, and it'll stick with you. Like I remember our conversation being so great last time, and I'm so glad that we visited again this year.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting when you watch an older movie is the way they do things, and all that's kind of a bit different. Like there's a scene in here where he's talking to the one dude, and I just go, man, to have a library like that behind him, he's got a big, gigantic astronomical star chart behind him. And even though it's a soundstage, the fact that you can look out the back part of it and see where they've got trees and it's dark, there's something about old stage design that conveys the sense of that, even though it's a set that might only go 20 feet deep or however they designed it to film it, that it works. And also some of it's the aspect ratio, the views are a lot closer. I'm always drawn to the suits that people wear or how they dress because it matters. And here you look at it and you go, man, these people are dressed sharp, but it's not flashy. It's just, that's what a lot of people dressed like back then. The way they walk around towns and all that. I don't care if this is a backlot. It feels real to me because it feels old. And the whole dynamic of the way you've got something on film that's not digitized with the lights and everything is tremendous. One person I did not look up is the blonde one that he kind of starts talking to her, because you look at that and you go, she's very classy in an old school sort of way. And yes, it almost seems like it's a stage play in a sense of coming up. But that's the whole point, is there's nothing to distract you in the background. There's not a lot of extra sound. There's not a lot of this and that. Everything matters when you have a film that's maybe 70, 75 minutes long. From the way they talk, the way it moves the plot. There's no extra meat on the bone. It's very lean. It's how a movie should be made, and I appreciate it. They don't have the opportunity that people that spend 3 years and $1 billion making stuff like The Lord of the Rings and all that want to get into sidebar stuff that nobody gives a rat's ass about. It's a tragic thing based off a tragic event. A guy gets involved unwittingly. And Lon Chaney himself, when I look at him, I don't look at him and go, this guy's a loser. Obviously, he's a famous actor, been around forever. He'll be immortalized with all this because of how much staying power this movie and these had. But he's just a general average guy and gets caught up in something he shouldn't be, and there's nothing he can do about it. And I think one of the interesting things about movies is that the way you would kind of keep people in line as cultures would develop over the generations and the millennium and all that is you would tell scary stories, because that's how you would convey information to the next generation. You could write it in a book, of course, but that's only been around maybe 1,000 years or whatever it's been. But like this, telling stories that tell people, hey, if you're a good girl, don't be a bad girl. Don't do something or whatever, or you'll pay a price. If you're a bad guy, you better blah, blah, blah. And so to have this guy try to still do everything right, end up in a bad situation, it's that story of, well, as an adult, you're going to get fucked. No, and not in a good way. And there is a sadness to it. It is kind of whatever. And I think in a way that makes it a bit more compelling, because you go, hey, this isn't no fault of his own. And we all, as an adult, can understand you can get involved in a situation you can't control. And his performance trying to play against that is really, really great. I know Frankenstein's probably the darkest one, but at the end of the day, it's just a crazy guy and a monster. Here we can sympathize with him because he is a lone wolf, literally, figuratively. And that's where I do agree with both you guys. I think our audience that voted for this, that's what I think is more compelling, because there is that human element to it.
So for me, I was looking up the actors. I always do that whenever we watch this stuff. I want to see what else they've been in. Evelyn Ankers plays the main girl, Gwendy, here. She's the love interest of Larry Talbot.
Lon
Chaney's significant or whatever other. Anyway, she is married. She was married to Richard Dennings. Do you know who Richard Dennings is, right? Creature of the Black Lagoon. We just reviewed that.
No kidding.
Yeah, they're married together. Yeah, they're both buried next to each other. But they started opposite. She died in '85 because she had ovarian cancer. She died at 67 years old. But Richard Dennings is buried right next to her. It makes sense because Universal was putting all these movies, and why would they not mingle? Remember, these are sound stages, so you're walking by, you see people,
you're having lunch with them, you're working on different projects. And remember, back then, if you got picked up on a contract, that might pay you a wage weekly, but it's so you wouldn't go to another studio unless they loaned you over, and then they would teach you how to dress, how to walk and talk. So you were being made while you're there. So you would have a history with the studio. It makes perfect sense.
She would go, her and Richard Denning would go on for the next, 20, 30 years. It was basically just starring movies opposite each other, on-screen romance stuff. So that was kind of cool. Yeah. It's that this movie is, like I said, beautifully shot, black and white. I wouldn't be shocked if there's a color version out there, because I've seen some colorized stills. There is. IMDb, and I feel like it would change the tone of the movie putting in color, because I love the mysterious black and white. Kind of hides a little bit more stuff because it's kind of hard to see, because like gray, muted colors, they blend in, especially at the nighttime. I feel like you put in color, it just makes you feel like you're watching Gilligan's Island.
Well, I've got two things to say on that. Then I'll hand it over to Pixel, being the young 20-something. I'm sure he'll have something to say. One, when TBS and TNT back in the 80s, started doing the Super Channel and all that, they got AMC, American Movie Classics, whatever. There was this big push in the 80s to colorize classic movies, and people were like, "Fuck no!" And one of the reasons is what you said, and it's true. The way you would do makeup to film for black and white is not the same way you do makeup to do it. So you can use computers, you can use whatever to colorize and all that. It doesn't look right. And I've seen colorized versions of movies that I've watched, and my parents would be like, well, is that in color? And like, well, yeah, is it not supposed to be? They're like, no, that was black and white, and it does make a difference. You're absolutely right about
and
that.
Margaret says she had a few movies that are black and white, and they started color. I've seen some color stills of that, and it's just like it does not look right. It looks like it's just because the makeup especially is done for black and white,
Yes.
and when they film in color, they use different makeup tones.
Yes.
So when you try to, but it is cool to see, because as far as I Love Lucy, when I first started on black and white, I had no idea. I thought she was a blonde until you get the color version. All of a sudden, she's a redhead. What? It just like a strawberry redhead, strawberry blonde redhead. So honestly, there are some things that you put in stuff in black, that are black and white, you put it into color. It is cool to see, because everyone just has the same hair color. Either you're dark hair, you have black hair, or you have light brown.
Right.
You can't see the blonde in these movies. So, but like I said, this is plus. But monster movies should always be in black and white. Frankenstein, whether it's Dracula, because it has that horror vintage aspect. Or just kind of like tone to it. So I can't imagine this being in color.
It's there and it exists.
Look at the moon in the sky, the way it's done, and the branches. No, quit drinking.
Don't do that, or we're kicking you off.
I will kick you out of that porthole.
That's right. Now, Pixel, you and I have reviewed a lot of horror stuff on our own, and in particular, I'm thinking how over the past few years we've done the universal treatment with a lot of Hammer horror films. We've done a lot of the films, not necessarily all of them, of course, but some of each. Their versions of Frankenstein, the versions of Dracula. We did the Karnstein trilogy about lesbian vampires. We saw how Hammer decided to put a British spin on it by colorizing it and by Karnstein.
Oh.
So, here's the thing with vampires. Everyone always thinks it's Bram Stoker's Dracula. Sheridan Le Fanu and a few others. Vampires go back before that, and actually the Karnstein trilogy comes from that. So there is actually a literature basis for all this, rather than just some guy in the late 1800s wrote all this shit. It kind of goes back, and that's what Hammer decided to do. And they said, you know what? We're not Universal. We're going to colorize it. We're going to sex it up. We're going to put beautiful women there, and we're going to put some writing in and make it for an adult audience rather than just a general one. So
we're going to have
Pixel, I was going to ask you, based off of some of the ones we've done over the past 2 weeks versus the Hammer ones, can you see a big difference between the two, or do they all appear to be the same? I mean, what kind of thoughts do you have about that?
No, there's major differences in their style and execution. A large section of that, though, is the time that they came out.
True.
Classic Universal films are classic for a reason. Their era is now long gone.
Yeah, just because they did them first.
Golden Age.
And you could say that for Hammer too, but there are more things connecting to that Hammer era than the classic Universal monster era. But this is also just this is one of those movies that you need to go ahead and you need to see. If you care about horror films at all, you have to go back to the classic, because this begins so much, and you have legacy in here. This is it's Lon Chaney Jr., his father, Lon Chaney. They are the masters of being the monster.
Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney Jr., and then like whoever played Dracula.
Bela Lugosi.
Yeah,
Bela Lugosi.
Again, see?
Mm-hmm.
Where Hammer is completely different. It's Vincent Price and Christopher Lee. Vincent Price,
Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. A few others, but mostly those guys.
Well, Vincent Price, though, him and just in general, the way he delivers lines, it's like there's no one like him unless you get a drunk James Mason. But
that's true. That is true. Well, I want to ask you guys, and I'll ask our audience too that's listening. This is by far the runaway favorite on the most recent poll. Why do you think people voted for this rather than the other movies that were in the poll? And remember, we've been doing classic horror movies, so some of these movies have been shown again, right? Or been on the poll, right? So to me, I look at that and go, wow, I'm really impressed by the fact that people gravitated towards this movie more than Man-Made Monster, which is Newbie, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah. The reason I think it is because what's the first thing you think of when you think of Halloween? the Wolfman, classic Universal. You think of Frankenstein. I'm shocked that Dracula. What? To be fair, we had Frankenstein versus Dracula. Dracula outside. I think in the next poll I put him up in, I think he'll pull ahead. The Mummy is an acquired taste. It's like, but the big poppers, like I said, we watched the movies like the Monster Squad was. You always had these classic. You have the
big three.
Yeah. You have Dracula, you have Frankenstein, you have the Wolfman. Those are always the big three that are always in like even today's remakes of horror movies.
Yes.
Phantom of the Opera is more considered a romance story.
It is.
Like, yeah, even though it's considered like horror romance because it's
a love triangle.
Yeah. Hunchback of the Notre Dame really came in close in one of our polls. Our last poll, Creature Black Lagoon, beat it out. I guess they're more the stories are probably done well, or people just love the idea of these characters. They're more popularly known, especially vampires, Frankenstein, Wolfman. People love werewolves. People love vampires. People love Frankenstein's monster, or Frankenstein. Sorry, Mummy. He's a guy that just walks like this, and like he's not really entertaining. Creature Like Black Lagoon is like people are afraid of like going.
That's Florida man stuff right there.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I personally want to watch like The Invisible Man because that sounds really cool. Like they did a remake, remember, with Kevin Bacon called Hollow Man, or Joe went crazy, or was he crazy to begin with? But regardless, I want to watch The Invisible Man. I've never watched that. I've never watched what was the other one? We just
The Invisible Man from a few years ago.
Well, no, Dr. Jekyll and well, that was crap. I didn't like the one with the girl. Sorry.
Tremendous movie.
Yeah.
Good movie.
But no, the one I was going to bring up was the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Even though that's not really considered a Universal movie, it's still one of the very first of its kind. But there is a Universal version though. But it was before they became Universal, the studio they were before. So there is, and it's a short little video, like a 30-minute video, but it's silent though. Silent movies. And that's the thing. We've never really talked about doing silent movies on here because we have what was the one? The Man Who Smiled? Or what it was? The one that when they based the Joker off, I forget what it's called. It was in the one of our last polls. And so, yeah, those movies kind of get glossed over because everyone's like, dude, werewolf, vampire, Frankenstein, monster. And so as much as I love doing these or talking about these, I think, like I said, I'm obviously I would, if I could skew the poll to what I want to watch. But that's why I'm glad that you and I are recording stuff on Tuesday nights offline, so that way we can at least, we're thinking about doing more. We did Salem's Lot remake. But that way we can get some more reviews in here that aren't one of the less popular ones. But we still want to review them, though. Like, I thought about putting Sleepy Hollow in here. I know we reviewed that a while back with Christopher Walken and Johnny Depp.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit of what I'd call a gothic thing, which has its own thing to it. And I'm curious because I have an answer for why I think people really respond to the Wolfman, but I want to hear Pixels before I give mine and we close up.
Oh, I really just think it's when you come to thinking about these universal horror movies, the Wolfman is just a story that you want to hear about, you want to talk about. We had a great conversation last time and this time. It sparks something in you talking about these films.
It scratches beneath the surface.
Well, I'll explain it in other terms because here on the Extreme Movie Show we do like to talk about themes compared to other different shows that we've watched and reviewed, and we'll disagree and all that, and it's interesting. But for me, I go back to one of my key tenets of storytelling is that stories are just that. We talk about fisherman stories. The fish always gets bigger, this and that, and it's in the telling of the story that information's passed down from generation to generation, and whether it's print media or visual media, which this is a very visually great looking film. It still holds up today, I think, like a lot of them do, the black and whites. I think the important thing here is if we think about it, let's take Frankenstein, for example. It's just a monster. Let's talk about Dracula. supernatural being. You could argue as a human who became one. Same thing with the Wolfman. The point is that the Wolfman is a human being, a decent person that, like, again, is cursed. And I think the fact that we're talking about a human being, not a superhero, not a supervillain, not somebody from outer space, an alien or something like that, there's just something that clicks in our head. Much like I would agree that Phantom of the Opera is your classic love triangle between young suitor and old man, who might be the reason why she reaches sexual heaven or whatever like that, giving her first orgasm, which some people believe is the plot to it. And you could argue that, and I'm serious. You could argue Beauty and the Beast is a woman's fantasy of taming an animal and making it her own, which is, that's a fantasy for a woman. That's what appeals to them.
That's
I think
illegal.
it's there's classic tropes like love triangles that exist no matter what culture you're in, because that's human nature is what I'm saying. And I think because this is an average dude that gets caught up in stuff, that's what makes it kind of scary and adult. And it's to make you realize that there's, like I say, things you can't control, but it's the human element. And I often bring that up as a theme in some of us. Who are we rooting for? And you and I have talked about this before, RDV, on certain things about, like, well, you know, we're really behind this person, we're like that person, or hey, this is really great writing. And I always go, yeah, but you know what? Why do I care if this person was a bad guy? Now they're turning good. I never liked them before anyway. And so it's hard when people try to stay away from the basic fact that no matter what, if you've got a fire sitting down and you got a bunch of kids around, you tell some bullshit ghost story and you make it up as you go. Nobody really cares what the story is. It's you telling it what goes on. And I think the Wolfman, and I think both you guys have mentioned this, I forgot myself, because I hadn't watched this in a few years, how good it looks just to watch it, and how it, you know, there's set pieces, and you know that's a painting behind the guys, and you know there's probably, you know, a bunch of directors 5 feet next to them on the side. It works though. It pulls you in. You believe their performances. You're dealing with competent people treating the source material seriously enough where you're like, it's all clicking, it's connecting, and I just think that's really a great thing about it. So it'll be interesting with whatever that's going to be on the next poll,
So
what our audience picks.
it's funny you brought up Beauty and the Beast, because that was based off a 1740 French novel.
Mm-hmm.
And so when and obviously the Wolfman and, like, you know, just the story of being cursed by a werewolf is can be traced back through folklore, you know, back to the ages. I'm curious, was the Wolfman an idea that spawned off, a werewolf spawned off from Beauty and the Beast? Because Beauty and the Beast was
a question. My immediate thoughts that would be is I don't think so. I thought there was something. Well, you always get monster stories, right? Like you get the Wendigo, you get this, you get that, and they're all culturally dependent. I thought the werewolf was kind of like Dracula and that it was area dependent. I may be wrong. I think that's a great question, because
obviously they share similarities. You know, a guy's cursed, you know, and wants to be with someone, and then his saying he has a happy ending because basically the true love can break the spell, because he rejected the advances of another woman, so she cursed him. This the Wolfman, it's, you know, it's just a curse that's been going on, and he gets bit, but you know, and he wants to be with this girl, and not so much a happy ending for him, tragic ending. So I feel like someone just decided, like, you know what, I love this French novel, Beauty and the Beast, let's make it more tragic, you know.
I don't think so. I because the
well, I mean, as far as the story,
it has to be, doesn't it? Otherwise, there's no horror element to it. The horror element is not him transforming once a month and murdering people. It's the fact he can't get what he wants as an adult.
Because we've always saw there was an American werewolf in London.
Same thing.
Yeah, tragic ending. So I mean, as far as werewolves, though, that's a totally different. I'm not talking about that where the werewolf idea came from. That was what was going circulating. But I wonder if someone came with an idea for like home. They tell you, like in this movie, there's that scene where they're showing the journal, whatever, flipping through it, and it says the quote. It says like even though a man has a pure heart, will still be if he's bitten, will turn into a werewolf every night, cursed. Or whatever. Like, I'm butchering it, but it means like.
But no, you're right. Basically, your pure heart, you can still be seduced.
Yeah.
It basically means the devil.
Yeah.
Or woman.
So I wonder if like when they're coming up with this story, because I can't find any traces of a story with a wolf man with the same story like this before this movie came out. So I wonder if they're like, they saw like, well, there's that Beauty and the Beast, novel, it came out, or French, or whatever, poem, whatever. Why don't we just change it for this movie? And then and that's how it caught on, because like it went from being happy to more like oh crap, if you get bit, you're screwed. And the guy finds love, and even though he finds love, he still meets an untimely, death. Especially here, it's a tragedy. He gets shot, and like they it's not like it's was ever meant to be a happy ending, but you kind of wonder like this. Hope this guy can be cured,
Right.
Like with like they always say, like there's different vampires. There's always different things you can do. It's like if you kill the main vampire, the victims will turn back into humans, or they'll die. It all depends who's writing it though. But like I said, this is your tragic like romance story. It's like, it's
Made by adults for adults.
guy. It's like the Great Gatsby.
No, they've been around, I think, a really long time. I mean, because you think about dogs being man's best friend, and they're I believe people with to say they come from the line. So I would be shocked if there wasn't some historical context.
But I like though you brought up the hammer, and they obviously don't know the Victorian style how they do things.
Mm-hmm. Very sexy.
When you look in the Claude Rains house there, the way it's set up, I got some Victorian hammer vibes.
Yes.
So
I mean, idea, set pieces, everything else, absolutely.
So, like I said, my final thoughts. This is a good movie. It's not my favorite Wolfman movie, but it's still a good movie. A must watch. If you've never watched it, check it out. Just for the performances. I mean, I'm a Bela Lugosi fan, so I mean, not really much of a Lon Chaney. Even though Lon Chaney Jr. came back, reprises like 3 more times.
Mm-hmm.
There's even the Wolfman meets Frankenstein, Wolfman meets Dracula.
I know.
And I'm just like, maybe we'll save that for like the next Halloween years later, because we've done these, and we'll just go on more of the obscure ones.
Yes, absolutely.
And we'll just torture Pixel with some of them.
Final thoughts?
No, see, the only thing that's torturing me is that you say you're a Bela Lugosi fan and you keep saying Lugosi. Please.
Lugosi, yeah.
Any other final thoughts, Pixel?
It's a solid film. If you have not seen the classic Wolfman, if you haven't seen any of the classic Universal monster movies, you're doing yourself a disservice. Go witness history.
Yeah, very watchable. And check out the new poll debuting Tuesday night, I believe. And Tuesday night we'll be going live RDV. So I'm looking forward to that. We got 2 more weeks before we get into Halloween. So man, we're in the thick of things now. This is a really great time to be talking about stuff here on Extreme Movie Show. Love this kind of stuff. Man, it never gets old. It's good stuff. It gets older and it still gets better. Everybody, I want to say thanks for watching, listening. I want to thank everybody that comes in and lets everybody know we exist. Spending time with us, participating in polls. I really appreciate that as well. We've had some really solid turnouts and all that. That makes it a little bit more exciting when we go to watch it, to kind of go, yeah, people voted on this. They really want us to talk about it. So that's really cool stuff.
For those who are wondering how you can watch all these classic movies, Walmart just released this 6-movie collection. It has all the classics in the back here. So you got Dracula, you got Frankenstein, you got the Mummy, Invisible Man, the Wolfman, which we just reviewed.
Yep.
And then it has the Bride of Frankenstein. So it has the original classic 6 classic collections of the movie. So I definitely be using this when we review stuff. Keep watching.
Some of it also can be found on the Internet Archive, and also Tubi's a nice resource. Sure. So check this out, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Usually if we find a good link that's legal or standing and all that too, we'll post it as well. If you got any questions, just please let us know. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Good night now.
Pixel, hit the button, boy.
This was not a Dan Curtis.
No. We don't do that on this channel.